The letter that spoke the truth. Imagine a case gone cold, a murder that time itself seemed to forget. But what if the truth refused to stay buried? What if it found its way back, years later, in a form no one could have predicted? This is the story of a letter that shouldn't exist, a confession written not in ink, but in tears and guilt. It arrived on a quiet morning, an ordinary envelope with no stamp, no return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten, its words shaking with an untold story. It described a murder from years ago, a crime that had stumped detectives and broken a family. The details were chillingly accurate, intimate, things only two people could have known, the victim and the killer. This wasn't just a clue dropped by a ghost. It was a soul reaching out from the darkness, desperate to be heard. For years, one person had refused to let the memory of her child fade into a cold case file. The victim's mother, while the world moved on, she held on, her grief a silent, burning fire. Every day was a vigil, every knock on the door a flicker of hope that quickly died. Until this letter, when she held it in her hands, she felt a connection she hadn't felt in years. She knew, with a mother's intuition that defies all logic, that this wasn't a cruel prank. It was a message from someone haunted by the same ghost that visited her every night. Someone was still suffering. Let's look closer at the words that broke a decade of silence. Each sentence was a fragment of a nightmare. I met him by the old oak tree. One line read, describing a secret meeting no one knew about. He told me he couldn't keep the secret anymore. The letter spoke of a betrayal, a heated argument, a scream swallowed by the night. The handwriting was erratic, a mix of neat loops and jagged slashes, as if the writer was fighting a war within themselves. The paper was thin, almost translucent in places, stained by what could only be tears. The truth wasn't just written on the page, it was screaming from it. Detective Miller had seen it all. In his 30 years on the force, he'd read confessions from the most hardened criminals, but this was different. He ran a gloved finger over the trembling script. It wasn't the arrogant scrawl of a killer boasting of their crime. It was filled with sorrow, with a strange kind of affection. He noticed the phrasing, the way the writer referred to the victim by a childhood nickname only close friends knew. This wasn't written by an enemy, Miller said to his team, holding the letter up to the light. This was written by someone who loved him. And just like that, a case frozen in time began to thaw. It was the first real lead in over a decade. The investigation was reopened, and it felt like digging up graves. Old evidence boxes were dusted off, long-forgotten witnesses were re-interviewed. But this time, the questions were different, guided by the letter's mournful tone. The detectives weren't just looking for a killer, they were looking for a broken heart. The trail led them through a web of old friendships and family ties, and with every step, the carefully constructed lives of those involved began to crumble. Alibis that once seemed solid now had holes. Decades-old secrets came spilling out. The letter wasn't just pointing to a killer. It was exposing the lies everyone had been telling themselves and each other for years. The trail of tears and ink led them not to a monster, but to a quiet, unassuming figure, someone who had been there all along, hiding in plain sight, crushed by the weight of what they knew. When the confession finally came, it wasn't the one anyone expected. The final confrontation was quiet, filled with a profound sadness. It turned out the letter wasn't written to confess to the murder. It was written to forgive the person who had committed it. The writer had witnessed the crime but had been paralyzed by fear and loyalty. The letter was their way of letting go of the hate that had consumed them, and in doing so, they inadvertently pointed the detectives to the real killer, who had been living a life of quiet desperation. The justice that followed wasn't about a courtroom verdict. It was about the truth finally setting multiple people free. Today, if you were to visit the police archives, you might find that letter. It's not locked away in an evidence bag, it's framed, hanging on a wall. It serves as a permanent reminder to every detective who passes by that evidence isn't always about fingerprints and DNA. Sometimes, it's about the human heart. It's a testament to the fact that truth has a voice, and it will always find a way to speak, even if it's through the simple, powerful act of a hand putting pen to paper, driven by a love that refuses to forget. The most powerful stories are often the ones whispered in the dark, the ones born from pain and the enduring hope for closure. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart of a mystery. If you found this story as captivating as I did, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown. We'll see you in the next one.